Meanwhile, aside from the stronger than expected jobs number, we do have the port strike to watch. The workers are returning to their jobs today after reaching this temporary labor deal to end the strike, at least suspend it. Our next guest was a part of those negotiations. Let's bring in the U.S. Acting Labor Secretary, Julie Su. Madam Secretary, great to have you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
A lot of TikToks out this morning sort of looking at your involvement and Zionson's involvement and how you managed to keep this quiet. Can you talk about your role in all of this?
Well, I think the big story is obviously it's a big jobs day, and the collective bargaining process in that case really worked. We've been saying it all along that when workers have a real voice at the table, when they can help to determine the conditions of their jobs, we're seeing really historic gains for working people. We're also seeing it because we have such a strong economy. You know, there's just more to go around. Companies that are making record profits are realizing that when they do right by their workers, it's better not just for working people, it's better for their industry, it's better for for their future. It makes the American economy stronger. So we're glad to see the ports back open, and we're glad to see both sides back at the table.
There was this video of Harold Daggett mentioning that he would cripple, I will cripple you, was the phrase he used, trying to explain the leverage that the longshoremen had over the entire economy. Do you think that colored perception of the union? Did it move these negotiations in any way?
I think anyone who's been a part of these things knows that when negotiations are going on, they can get heated. You know, people can say a bunch of things. The reality is that longshoremen play a very critical role in our economy, and this, this negotiation helped to highlight that. These are difficult, often dangerous jobs. They are jobs that allow people to make a good, honest living, and this agreement is going to help make sure that that continues to be the case.
Well, Madam Secretary, Jim Cramer, the difficult and dangerous jobs issue is why Rotterdam, which is one of the top 10 ports in the world, went entirely unmanned. When I was out at video this year, they showed me machines that would be unmanned that could handle any sort of what would have been otherwise a tragedy with humans. Where are we in terms of getting to where Rotterdam would be without laying off people and without hurting people who are currently working?
Yeah, I mean, that is part of the broader conversation around, what is the impact of automation? What do we want to see, right? Especially been highlighted because of, advancements in artificial intelligence. I think that is the right question, which is how do we make sure that as we look at technology and those kinds of improvements, how do we make sure that working people share, right? It's the same issue around the wages. As things improve, we want to make sure that workers' lives also improve. And I think there are ways to do that. Automation is going to be something that the parties continue to talk about. And again, this is why workers having a say is so important, when, how, whether technology is going to be implemented, and, and what the impact is going to be on real families. One of the signs that the longshoremen had on the picket line was machines don't have families. We care, and this president and this vice president care deeply, and the economic effects our record is clear on this, that when the economy does well, we care what happens to working families. And this is yet another example of how, profits and prosperity can be shared.
But the rise of automation in all sorts of areas and robotics, of which we're really just at the beginning, given the rise of generative AI. I mean, I know this is a long-term issue, and obviously we're coming off a very strong jobs number this morning. But I do wonder how, you think about it as the acting labor secretary. Ultimately, are we still going to have the need for as many jobs in 5 years or 10 years as we do now, given the rise of automation and the rise of robots, frankly, that don't even exist right now, but will certainly be doing many jobs in a number of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think every, several years, there's a conversation about this. And I think one of the realities is that in many countries, like you mentioned in the port in Rotterdam, in many countries, people aren't as afraid of what's going to happen with automation because there's so much attention to job security, right? We care about our people, and that's something that this president has made very clear in his executive order around artificial intelligence, that we want, when we look at AI to make sure that it is secure and responsible when it comes to workers too. And in the specific issue of the ports and the longshoremen, the fact that they have a voice makes a really big difference. We're seeing that in all kinds of industries now. We saw it with the writers and the actors, right? We're seeing it with hospitality workers, where there's a union and where workers can have input into what happens. The outcomes are really good for everybody. We're not going to live in a world where where machines dominate. The other issue is that sometimes that raises national security issues. All of those things are important parts of the conversation.
Yeah, but you do need to get efficiencies if you're going to increase wages by 63% or so over the next 5 years. Are your expectations that wage increase is ultimately going to get passed on to consumers?
Well, I think that it's a false choice to say that either working people can do well or consumers can have things they can afford. And we have seen, again, in this economy where jobs have grown, real wages have grown, inflation rates and interest rates are coming down, that we can build an economy where everybody gets a piece of it. Everybody gets to share in the American dream. That is fundamental to the economic policies that we have pursued. There are choices that are made all the time, including by corporations, many of whom do a great deal to benefit our economy. But having to say that, if I'm going to share the tens of billions of dollars in profit with workers means that I'm going to have to charge more for my products is not a choice. It's not the only choice. The other issue here is, monopolistic behavior, right? This is why we believe that we shouldn't have big corporate monopolies, because people should have a choice. Competition helps to ensure that prices also stay fair. And so that's why we're still committed to, battling inequality on all fronts.
There was an amazing piece, Madam Secretary, in the Baltimore Sun yesterday, looking back 50 years ago when the dock workers were protesting a different kind of innovation, which was the shipping container. And then there was these comments made by the union president not long ago about sort of lamenting the advent of the Easy Pass and all those lost toll worker jobs. I guess, are you convinced that organized labor won't be too much friction on innovation?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason to believe that either unions or working people themselves do not believe in innovation, right? In fact, some of the best innovation we have comes from, workers who are doing a job and recognize how it could be done better, how it could be done faster. Productivity in this country is up. That's part of the story of the strong economy. And so, again, workers having a seat at the table, which is exactly what's going to happen as the ILA and the USMX come back to the table, has demonstrated time and time again that it's better for everybody. And that is why the president has been so clear that we support workers having a voice, we support the outcomes that are happening, and we believe in shared prosperity.
Madam Secretary, on another day, we'd be talking more about the jobs number today, but this is big news. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su.